M14 has just started their playtest, which I unfortunately was unable to take part in the first playtest, but I do hope to keep playing it in the future as it gets more uptime and probably more frequent playtest. Armor in CM14 works pretty much identically as it does in CM13. There are armor penetrating rounds and non-armor penetrating rounds. Some Xenos feature armor, some Xenos do not feature armor. Marines also feature armor, but we're not going to really cover Marine on Marine fire because I don't know if you need to know how to kill your friends more efficiently. You're going to kill them accidentally anyway. Currently in CM14, high tier Xenos are not really implemented because Marines don't have their high tier equipment, and from what I heard from the playtest, Xenos have been absolutely stomping anyway. Currently, there are only two armored Xenos in the game. There is the Queen, who has 25 armor, and the Defender, who has 35 armor, but can get more with the usage of abilities. So that means every other Xeno from the Hive Lord up have no armor, meaning that if a bullet says it does 40 damage, like a 9mm bullet, it will do 40 damage. So I'm not going to go down the line and shooting every single one of them with every single bullet. That would be unnecessary. Some guns actually have hidden damage modifiers, but this doesn't make them necessarily do more damage to armored or unarmored targets, it just makes them do more damage, and the damage will still get reduced by the same proportion. For example, a 10 by 24mm bullet does 40 pierce, but that's just what the bullet does. The M41A actually increases damage by 10% when bullets fired out of it, and the M4RA, which uses the same bullets, increases it by 40%, which, interestingly, in CM13, it only increases it by 30%, but it increases by 40% in 14. Not sure if that's 100% intentional. Either way, it does a tiny bit more damage in CM14. So I don't really know the exact way that damage is reduced, and I don't exactly know how armor actually works, but I can explain it in a way that you as a player need to know and can understand. The Queen has 25 armor, so that means if you hit a Queen, you're going to be doing only slightly more than half your usual bullet damage. So I can showcase this really quickly. The M41A does 44 damage a shot to unarmored targets. I put a non-AP ammo into it, so if I shoot the Queen once, and we observe how much damage they actually took, we did still do over half our damage. We didn't do 22, we did 25. But if we increased our armor upwards of to 30, we would have done less than half just by a slight amount. So the defender only has 10 more armor, but they are significantly more resistant to non-AP ammo. So instead of doing 25 damage, we've only done 17. So that eventually means that if a Xeno is armored enough and you don't have enough penetration value, you will do literally 0 damage. So armor penetration in this game isn't just damage reduction. Well, it is, but there's also a certain amount of armor that you can either punch through or enough armor to completely resist damage entirely. So the base damage of 9mm AP is actually only 25, where the non-AP is 40. However, if we examine something like the higher caliber cartridge, the 10 by 24, the AP does 30, but the non-AP does 40. So instead of only being a 25% decrease, it's more significant. So that means 9mm AP ammo does so much less damage that against something like the Queen, 9mm AP ammo actually still does less damage than normal 9mm, but against a defender, it only does slightly more. So the compared to SMGs to the rifles, it's actually interesting where for the pistols currently, the 9mm pistols, you don't really want to swap to AP at all until you're fighting defenders specifically in the playtest. So the SMG, you actually want to get armor pen quicker for lower damage values. So like the armor pen, so like if a Xeno has 25 armor, aka like the Queen, the armor pen bullets will still keep doing their 26 damage value, but you're only going to be doing like about 18 or so damage against a Queen per shot. So you're losing out on a lot of damage really quickly for the SMG, more specifically than the rifles, unless you swap to AP. Of course, using AP against a Queen, you're still going to end up doing more damage. Bullet values aren't quite made equal with armor pens. Some are better than others at it. But anyways, the chart should help explain it, and hopefully this isn't too rambly. Shotguns are also another pretty unfinished product right now. Like the flechettes the flechettes are armor penetrating, but they don't have like the extra values and like interactions how they do in CM13 where they have like fragments and stuff and do different damage at different ranges. Also, I don't even think damage drop off even exists right now in CM14. But buckshot actually is incredibly strong. The shotgun's probably the strongest marine weapon currently right now. I'm not 100% sure how these values work in CM13. I don't 100% know how damage drop off even works in CM13. Again, I'm only covering CM14. Slugs do have some form of penetration, but really a slug just shoots out one big projectile that does pretty decent damage, does pretty good armor pen. So slugs are still going to be effective against your defender. So normally a slug does 70 damage to an unarmored target, But if I shoot a defender with it, you can see that unlike the other bullets, the non-armor pen bullets, the slugs actually do have pretty decent armor pen. So instead of doing 70 damage, it actually ends up doing 52. So we're not even losing half of the damage from something like a slug. So if you can land your slug hits even against the most armored Xenos in the game, like a defender at the moment, you're going to be doing pretty solid damage. So unless something changes between now and the next playtest, I wouldn't even bother using flechettes. Yeah, it does the full damage to even the most armored Xenos like the defender, but the flechettes only shoot out 3 projectiles of 30 damage each. So you're just doing like even if you land everything, like, yeah, it's not terrible. So if we observe buckshot against a defender and shoot him point blank, we can actually see that the buckshot normally does 65 damage a pellet, and there's 4 pellets. But if we shoot a point blank defender, we see that it did 99 damage. So yeah, it reduces it to about 25 a pellet. But the extra shots, the extra pellet per buckshot, and just a high raw damage still makes the non-AP version just better against the defender than even flechettes. The only way flechettes would be better, which I might as well cover it now, is that defenders can actually lower their heads to get slightly more armor. So there is an actual noticeable sprite of when they're lowering their head, but them lowering their head actually only gives them 5 more armor, which doesn't really change too much in terms of how you like want to actually like interact with them. So instead of doing 99 damage, I've now done 81. So just for science and further explaining how this works, we'll stick a flechette in there. And with the flechette, we are going to do basically identical damage, and that's when they have their head lowered. The only like real time I could see flechette specifically being useful right now in the playtest, again, they're unfinished. I probably shouldn't even be spending this much time on it. Defenders can fortify, which means they go completely immobile, but they gain a massive amount of armor. They actually go up to 65 armor. A flechette from the front. So a flechette from the front only did 20 damage, but it gets pretty interesting where the defender actually is less armored from behind if you could somehow manage to get behind a defender who is crouching. You can actually do more damage from behind. It's not even it's a pretty noticeable increase too. So defenders specifically have to position themselves rather well. So the M41A against a 65 armored opponent won't even hurt them. So if I shoot them point blank, they take no damage. If I shoot them from behind, we are still so far away from penetrating their armor with this that we do no damage still. However, this is where AP becomes massively beneficial, and it's going to become more beneficial as more armored Xenos are added, aka the higher tier ones. If we shoot it from the front, we do 11 damage. That's still very low amount of damage, but if we shoot it from behind, we end up doing about 14. So a massive percent increase. If you can somehow manage to flank a defender who is fortified, armor pen becomes even more noticeable there. There is also the M42A scoped rifle. It is the only specialist rifle in the game. The only bullet that is actually done for it in quotes is the marksman magazine. This gun features incredibly high armor pen, and only the weapon specialist can actually use this. So getting your hands on one, unless you can actually use it, is not going to be too helpful. So to a defender who has 65 armor from the front, even in this rifle with its extremely high pen, it doesn't even do the full damage. It does still more than half, but it only does 50. And from behind, we'll see that it does well over 50. So it's pretty much the same percent change as the other bullets that actually can pen. Explosive resistance works differently. And even some of these little Xenos over here actually do have some form of explosive resistance. But I feel like in normal gameplay, it's going to be really hard for you to be able to like calculate any like specific numbers with it. So just for fun, we're going to drop a HEDP grenade directly under a defender who I have modified their explosive armor to have none of. The defender actually took 360 damage from that, but a defender normally has 70 armor. So this is what I mean by like how like trying to utilize these numbers specifically is it's not going to be like all that useful. So with an explosive resistance of 70, they took about half. So I guess just to keep rough math, a defender will take about half the normal damage from an explosion, and some of these other Xenos have like 10 explosive resistance, which I guess if you're at the outer edge of an explosion, that might be the difference between like critting or not. So to really sum it up, It's around 15 to 20 armor rating that you want to start swapping the AP specifically, because then the raw damage of the unarmored bullet starts meeting the lower damage of the armor piercing bullet. Not all guns are made equal in this. Some guns, like the SMGs, you want to swap the armor pen even earlier. Some guns, like the pistols, as of right now, you pretty much don't want to swap the AP at all until you're fighting 35 armor. And then the rifles are somewhere in between right now, the M41A and the battle rifle. Shotguns, again, you pretty much don't want to use flechettes at all. So really, armor pen in CM13 is kind of varied. It is really situational and specific for your exact weapon. So doing some research on your weapon will help you make a more informed decision. Anyways, join the CM14 Discord to find out more information about playtests. I'm only giving information that is strictly accurate for the first playtest. I expect some of this to change from the second playtest. There'll probably be more Xenos and stuff. Maybe not for the second playtest, but obviously there will be more Xenos in the future. So knowing your armor pen values now and how armor pen works will help you out in the future. Thank you for watching.